And there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another incredible installment from very high above all the moronic, bombastic twits in the Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Friday. It's been quite a week on the program, and, you know, it seems, and I mentioned this yesterday on the show, but there are days where you just can't get away from a story. Yesterday, it was free speech and Charlie Kirk. Today, it is that crappy talk show host, and I don't even really know if you call him a host, but crappy comedian, crappy talk show host, Jimmy Kimmel. So on today's program, we've got quite a bit to talk about there, simply because there's a lot of different stuff going on online, and I've seen a number of different arguments about Jimmy Kimmel that are not exactly hitting the mark, and so I want to talk about those. But it also goes to one of the conversations we've been having. Well, it seems to be pretty often on the program. But it's what exactly is the free market, and how does the free market operate, and how ought it to operate? So we're going to talk about that because I think in some ways they kind of intertwine. But of course, it is Friday on the program, which means that's not the right soundbite, Ken. That's not the end of it.
I know what you were getting at, and that was kind of my signal to you. We don't have phone lines today. We have a technical issue. I'm working on trying to get them up.
Okay.
Because what is an open line Friday without a phone? It seems rather pointless.
Exactly. All right. Well, let's just continue on the program, and we'll work on it. We'll work on it as we go. All right, so first up, The Federalist. FBI sources alleged Biden stopped Burisma investigation to protect the interests of Hunter, new documents show. While the Vice President, Joe Biden, and of course, I'm sure you all remember this. Let me just give you a walk down memory lane. Check this out.
I'll give you one concrete example. I was, not I, but it just happened to be that was the assignment I got. I got all the good ones. So I got Ukraine, and I remember going over convincing our team, or others too, convincing that we should be providing for loan guarantees. And I went over, I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv, and I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to press conference. I said, no, I'm not going to, we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Oh, son of a bitch. Got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid.
Okay. Yeah. Well, the guy they had was actually solid. And the reason why Joe Biden wanted the prosecutor fired was because, of course, they were investigating Hunter Biden. And so Joe Biden used your money as a bribe, or I guess strong arm, whatever you want to call it, to get the prosecutor off of his son's tail. Well, there's new documents that have been released to show that that's exactly what he was doing. So continuing from the Federalist, the new documents strengthen the information in previously released records. Last Congress, Grassley released FBI 1023 records, statements from confidential sources alleging that when Biden was vice president, executives for Ukrainian gas company Burisma put his son, Hunter Biden, on the company's board of directors to protect us through his dad from all kinds of problems, according to that confidential human source. Burisma wanted to do business in the United States, but was facing a corruption investigation in Ukraine, led by then Ukraine prosecutor Viktor Shokin. Now, Viktor Shokin was actually kind of a straight guy. He was, in a manner of speaking, put in place by the Barack Obama administration. It got started before then, to kind of clean up some of the corruption in Ukraine. Well, he was doing exactly that. The only problem for Joe Biden is that the corruption involved his son and himself in their influence peddling scheme. Quoting now, regarding that investigation's impact on its ambitions in North America, Burisma CEO Mykola Zlochevsky reportedly said, quote, "Don't worry, Hunter will take care of all of these issues through his dad." Zlochevsky reportedly stated that he had to pay $5 million to Hunter Biden and $5 million to Joe Biden, an arrangement he described as polichili, which is Russian crime slang for being forced to pay or coerced to pay. The confidential human source who provided the information, Alexander Smirnova, was later prosecuted for lying to his FBI handler and took a guilty plea. But the Trump DOJ is re-examining the case, and now more evidence has come to light that tells a similar story to this. It never fails to surprise me that when some of these revelations come to light during an administration, and you've got the documents, and you've got Joe Biden on tape admitting to what he did, all of that is a conspiracy theory. And then when those folks are out of office, it's not such a conspiracy theory anymore. It ends up becoming proven to be the truth. It's just an example of how our justice system is entirely tilted in one way, in one direction. That if you are a conservative, well, then the justice system, the Trump is making some progress on this, but I don't think fast enough, because things like this continually happen, that the folks in power get away with crimes that you and I would be locked up for eternity for and thrown away the key. And even if it could be proven in a court of law that we didn't do it, we wouldn't have the money to pay for a lawyer to make it happen. But this sort of thing has got to come to a stop, and I'm not exactly sure how you do that, except to clean out the DOJ and to clean out the FBI. Those are two things that just have to happen. You have career bureaucrats in both of those agencies, and they just pretty much run them however they see fit. And even though the politicians change and their political nominees change, the folks that are in the back office, well, they're still there. They're not going anywhere. And so until we get a handle on those, I don't think that there's any way we're going to be able to change that. Now, of course, you have the Trump administration. He has the ability to pardon folks, and all of that. But it's I just don't think that he's working fast enough. Let's see here. What else we got today? Oh yeah. So Jimmy Kimmel, as I mentioned in the opening, so ABC fires Jimmy Kimmel. And there are a lot of folks online that say that, well, this is censorship. This is cancellation. It's infringing on his freedom of speech. So before I even begin any of this, let me just say that you do have a right to free speech. You do not have a right to a late night television show. And frankly, Jimmy Kimmel still has the freedom of speech. He just doesn't have the platform to do it. Now, let's not forget that there were a lot of late night hosts, news hosts, CNN, PMSNBC, that were celebrating the deplatforming of a lot of different conservatives. One of those was Tucker Carlson. I've got a video I'm going to play for you here in just a second. But
yeah, I just kind of want to focus for a second on why Jimmy was let go.
Oh,
If Jimmy's show had been successful, if they were making money on it, it wouldn't matter much what they said. They'd elect him.
Exactly.
He
That's
was
going to be my point. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, sorry to steal your
That's
thunder.
all right.
He's scraping the bottom of the barrel. They're not making any money. He goes out and makes this blunder, and to me, it's just like that one last nail in the coffin. Okay, we're done with you. We're going to do something more productive.
Well, and that's precisely the point. I mean, all of this in TV doesn't matter if you're selling tiddlywinks, widgets, or new television shows. Everything works on the almighty dollar. And like you say, Ken, if they were making money on that show, if advertisers were paying confiscatory advertising rates, it wouldn't matter what Jimmy Kimmel or anybody else said. They would keep them on the air, unless, of course, they were saying some really, really, really inflammatory things, which I would argue that Jimmy Kimmel did say those sorts of things. But again, if he were making money, it really wouldn't matter that much, because when I listened to what Jimmy Kimmel said, okay, and I was thinking about this on the way to the studio. So he says that basically that the Republicans are trying to, in every way they can, to convince you that the guy that assassinated Charlie Kirk, and we're not going to mention his name, by the way, that's a new rule on the program, but the guy that assassinated Charlie Kirk was a member of MAGA. Okay, so that's basically what he said, and then he tried to crack some jokes and played some video of Trump, kind of allegedly disregarding the whole Charlie Kirk thing. So let's just focus on what he said. Well, he was one of these MAGA people. All right, well, there was no evidence to support that. But how can you, and I guess we should just talk about how slander and libel works. Slander has to be, you say something that is untrue, and it's untrue, and you do it with malice aforethought. Okay, fine. Is there a possibility that, that was up in the air? Well, I don't really think so, but I think that there's some interpretation that could have been happening. Now, we all know that this guy was dating a so-called trans woman, just dating another man, and that he was definitely very steeped in LGBTQZXPWD ideology. He was not on the right. I mean, there's no question about it in my mind. But I don't know. I mean, it could have been up in the air, I guess. I'm trying to look at it from both sides. Now, secondly, if it is indeed slander, then who is it that's going to sue ABC and Jimmy Kimmel? The entire MAGA movement, because that's who he directed the comments at. Could it have been Charlie Kirk's family? Well, I don't know. I don't know exactly if he could have done that either. So, it was kind of a general statement, despicable as it was. However, I don't know that it rises to the level of a lawsuit. I mean, of course, you can sue somebody for anything that you want. It doesn't mean that you're going to win, though. And it certainly doesn't mean that you're not going to end up paying for their court costs. But like Ken said, if Jimmy Kimmel had been making money and if that show was successful, that probably wouldn't matter, because compared to a lot of other stuff that other late night show hosts have said, that was kind of tame. So I don't think that any of those arguments actually apply. I think it all boils down to the almighty dollar. Now, first, I want to talk about the politics surrounding this. Was he canceled? No. He was a terrible employee. He wasn't funny. He wasn't making money. He works for a private corporation. And because if we do believe in capitalism and the free market, then businesses ought to be able to hire and fire whomever they want. In Wyoming, it's an at-will hiring state. So your employer can walk up to you and say, your services are no longer required. And there's not a darn thing that you can do about it. They don't even have to give you an answer. They can just say, yep, we don't need you anymore. That's the way that it ought to be, because you work at the pleasure of your employer. And if you're not paying the bills, and if you're not, if there's no reason to keep you around, well then, you get fired. And that's exactly what it is. Now, there's all sorts of people, but I think that one interesting parallel would be Tucker Carlson. Now, I used to watch Tucker Carlson all the time. In fact, I would DVR his shows so I could watch them when I got home. And I really enjoyed him. Now, I think that he's kind of gone off the rails a little bit. But when he was fired by Fox, those on the left celebrated. That was great. In fact, here's Jimmy Kimmel celebrating Tucker Carlson's firing. Check this out.
Fox News
And
has
throw that up
severed
on the
bow
screen
ties
for
with
me,
Tucker Carlson. After all these years, they are parting ways, which means he was fired. I mean, that's really what parting ways means.
Listen to the crowd.
Tucker couldn't be reached for comment. He's already on a plane to Moscow to meet with his manager. But what a shock. I mean, what an absolutely delightful shock this is. Now Tucker can spend more time at home tanning his testicles and touching himself to that sexy green M&M. Sadly, he's probably not done poisoning old people's brains. The question now is, where will he do it next? Will he go to OAN? Will he go to Newsmax? Will he crawl back up Satan's fiery beehole from whence he came? We don't know. One of the most despicable mother Tuckers ever to appear on American television.
Okay, so why do I play that whole thing for you? Just to show you that there's some other crap that Jimmy Kimmel has said that is far more inflammatory and directed at one single person that definitely could have resulted in a lawsuit.
If I had a laugh track button, you could be as funny as he.
That's true. It's true. I mean,
all that was a laugh track.
Yeah, I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous. But the reason I played it for you, as disgusting as it was, is to show you that there's a lot of other stuff that Jimmy Kimmel has said that's, inflammatory too. And that one that I just played for you, I think that is far more lawsuit worthy than, what he said about the Charlie Kirk assassination. But when he said that, I mean, I don't know the financials behind his show, but they let that one slide because it worked for them. It was profitable for them. If they weren't making money, you would have seen the same result. And then the other part of this too, and I don't think we should let this get lost in the shuffle, is that the political climate in which he said that. You had Joe Biden in office, and the news, so-called news agencies, television networks, everybody had their own token. Token's probably the wrong word because most of them were liberals, but everybody had their own liberal late night show, and it was like open season on conservatives. So please don't tell me that any of this has to do with deplatforming or with canceling, because it doesn't. It all boils down to the almighty dollar. And those in power also celebrated Tucker Carlson's firing. Check this one out. Here's our old googly-eyed AOC. This one's irritating.
Tucker Carlson is out at Fox News. Couldn't have happened to a better guy. What I will say, though, is while I'm very glad that the person that was arguably responsible for some of the largest, driving some of the most amounts of death threats and violent threats, not just to my office, but to plenty of people across the country. I also kind of feel like I'm like waiting for the cutscene at the end of a Marvel movie after all the credits have rolled. And then you see like the villain's like hand reemerge out to grip over like the end of a building or something. But deplatforming works, and it is important. And
it's important.
There you go.
Yeah,
Good
there
things
you
can
go.
happen.
Okay, so all these leftists, they continually celebrated the deplatforming of conservatives, and I'm sure if I looked, I could find a whole bunch of stuff about Glenn Beck or Sean Hannity or a whole bunch of them. But when they were in power, none of that was canceling. None of that was censorship. None of that was an attack on free speech. But because it's a liberal, oh, well, now that it is. Let me just give you one more. This one's pretty ridiculous, too, but check this out.
Truly dropped as, I think, a shock to anybody who
The
heard
Communist
it,
News
even if
Network.
they knew that Brendan Carr, the pro-Trump chief of the FCC, had made the comments he made on that podcast.
America's
I don't think
less
there's anybody
free.
who literally thought within hours Jimmy Kimmel would be gone.
Right, absolutely right. In fact, this was very sudden this afternoon after Carr spoke out on that far-right podcast. Then some stations that are owned by other companies but affiliated with ABC started to complain to ABC. We know one of them, Nexstar, which has about 24 stations with the ABC logo and all the ABC programming. Nexstar publicly announced that they were going to drop Kimmel's show indefinitely. Within a matter of minutes, we heard from Disney that the show was being pulled altogether. That suggests to me that other station owners were probably also getting scared. Other station owners were probably also coming up with backup plans not to air Kimmel's show. But even though we're talking about comedy, this is so serious, Aaron. Yeah. America is a less free place if late night comedians cannot do and say what they want.
Okay,
of course, they can be tuned out. People can.
Okay, so first, America is a less free place. No, it isn't. In fact, it's just as free today as it was yesterday or the day before. The only difference being is that Jimmy Kimmel doesn't have a late night show, and a corporation. And let's just think like clearly about how this happened. So he says something that's deplorable. Obviously, if you support Charlie Kirk, you weren't in favor of that. And so a lot of other stations, and if you listen to what he said, a lot of other stations just said, we're not going to air that. We're not going to air Jimmy Kimmel. And so what was happening there is those individual stations are in different parts of the country, and they made the financial calculation that if they aired that, it wasn't going to be good for their pocketbook because of where we're at right now. I mean, the guy was just assassinated last week, I mean, little over a week ago. The tensions are raw. We've got a candlelight vigil for Charlie Kirk tonight in Sheridan at the college. So emotions are pretty high. So airing something like that, and just think about what happened with Bud Light. Okay, it wasn't even a sponsorship. They made some cans for Dylan Mulvaney and sent them to him. That's all that happened, and he made a video. And then, boom, their sales dropped immediately. Or Harley Davidson, or any of those companies. So all of these individual stations made the calculation to say, hey, if we air this guy anymore, nobody's going to watch our stuff. That's what happened.
Yeah, and think about who made that decision. It was Disney. And look
we're getting there. That's the larger one.
Yeah, look what they've been through over the last, all of the movies that they put out there with DEI and other sorts of crap in there, the woke garbage that's in there, and how they have completely tanked. And I think Disney's starting to realize, you know what, we can keep this fight up for a little while, but eventually it'll break us.
Exactly. It was a financial decision. Now, all of those, when you add it all up, right, the Communist News Network, they say, well, they were getting pressure. Okay, so the President of the United States puts out a couple of posts on Truth Social and says, this or that person needs to be fired. How often has he done that? I mean, really, think about it. How many times have you seen a post from Donald Trump, whether he was president the first time or not president or president now? How many times has he said, this person's terrible, they're really terrible, everybody says so?
That's just part of his shtick.
You're
fired,
It's exactly. That's his shtick. So don't tell me that it was political pressure, that it was censorship. It's not. He worked for a private company. And, when I worked for AT&T, Ken, I was a corporate trainer. And admittedly, in a call center, you're not hiring the highest quality of, employee base. At some points, you're just hiring anybody who walks through the door.
Hey, I used to work in a call center as an AT&T employee, so back off a little.
Well, so did I. But what I'm saying is I taught the classes, man. I'm telling you, sometimes they just hired, any warm body, and the hope was maybe you could teach them to answer the phone. Well, you get a building full of 300 people, and you'll have 4 or 5 people call in to work. And later, you find a post on Facebook where they're in Dollywood or Pigeon Forge. Or I guess Dollywood isn't Pigeon Forge. But anyway, posts on Facebook that they're out doing something else. Well, we had an entire group of people that their whole job was just to sit on Facebook all day long and just watch and see who called into work and, if they were off doing something. And even if you were, if you got, and this didn't happen often, you kind of had to be, in sort of management for this to happen. But if you got popped for a DUI, you were probably going to lose your job. And that happens with a lot of companies. If you're a teacher, maybe in Johnson County, you could be a county commissioner in Johnson County or Sheridan County and get popped for a DUI and nothing happens to you. But anyway, but if you're a teacher in Johnson County and you get popped for a DUI, you're probably not going to have a job anymore. Okay, so that's government, right? They're firing you based on something you did in your private time. Now, this is not that case. This is getting fired for something you did while at work that is detrimental to the boss's business. And so, I mean, it's this is just one case after another. Now, we're going to go ahead and take a break, and I've got one more piece to kind of wrap up this whole conversation, and it's from what I consider the most unlikely of source, but we're going to do it anyway. So we'll take a break, and then we'll come back.
Ever since gold backing was removed from the dollar, the value has dropped significantly over the past few decades. Experts say this is one of the main reasons goods are more expensive and your savings are worth less each year. How would you know how many dollars to save for retirement if the valuation of the dollar changes over time? Would you work all week for that $20 gold piece? Let's look at the valuation of this coin from the 1970s to today. When President Nixon took us off the gold standard in 1971, this coin traded for about $275. Today, it trades for about $14,000. Buying and holding rare coins using only a fraction of your portfolio is our suggested way to save for the future. Call U.S. Coin Capital at 1-800-878-2646 to get your free United States Gold and Silver Buyer's Guide.
Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Welcome to Lessons in Civility by Morton Buildings. Gentlemen, is your garage completely jam-packed full of all of your unnecessary crap, and your lovely wife has been on your tail, nagging you non-stop to clean it out? It's not because she just wants to incessantly irritate you. Chivalry dictates that you should clear out a space so she can park her car inside and you don't end up sleeping on the couch anymore. To do that, contact Nick and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. Not only are they the experts in metal building construction, they're also skilled at keeping you out of the doghouse. One more time. Their phone number is 307-674-2532, or you can check them out at their website, mortonbuildings.com. This has been Lessons in Civility from Morton Buildings. To the program. It's Open Line Friday. It's Open Line Friday on Cowboy State Politics. This is the day where we talk about whatever you want to talk about. Normally during the week, if you call in, you pretty much have to be on topic. I mean, there's a lot of times, and maybe my listeners are getting wise to this whole trick, but you got to talk to the call screener, which the call screener on this program is just kind of automatic. You hear my voice, and maybe I should just run through that. So when you call in, you're gonna hear a message from me, and then there's some little instructions, and then it asks you what you want to talk about. So whatever you want today, whatever you want to talk about, go ahead and call in. The phone number in the studio is 307-374-8989, 307-374-8989. It's Open Line Friday, so whatever you want to talk about all program long, we'll just go ahead and do it. All right, before the break, we were talking about this whole Jimmy Kimmel thing, how it is not a question of free speech. Jimmy Kimmel still has the right to free speech. He does not have a right to a television show. Neither do you or I or anybody else have that right. But again, it's only free speech if he's absolutely unable to talk anymore. And he still has that right. He's a private citizen now, or at the very least, his show is suspended. But there was a discussion on News Nation, and it's very similar to One American News or Real American News, just another news outlet. And one thing that I find interesting about that station is they have some hosts that, they kind of run the gamut. And one of them happens to be Chris Cuomo, the formerly employed person at the Communist News Network. And he was talking to Bill O'Reilly about this whole thing. Check this out. It's kind of long, but go ahead and listen to it or watch it.
I did an interview with Mediaite today where I said that these people on social media are entrepreneurs. They have no regulations. There is no standards. They do what they do, and you're free to take it or leave it. Disney is different. Disney has an image problem. Yesterday,
this is what you were referring to.
Brought in some kind of romance aspect to the evidence pointing to the assassin's heinous deed. It was outrageous. I've never seen anything like it. So Disney took a wallop from that. And now Disney...
Okay, so let's just pause right there just for a second. So what Ken was referring to earlier is there's been a whole bunch of stuff that Disney has gone through recently that has not been good for their bottom line. And so part of that figures in that, hey, we've got to make a dollar everywhere we can. And if we have a host that sucks, which Jimmy Kimmel does, and we don't have advertisers that want to be on during his program, maybe this isn't good for our bottom line. And they're probably paying him a crap load, or at least they were. It was all a financial decision. Now Bill O'Reilly's going to go into the real reason behind this. Let's continue.
Stations, particularly Salt Lake City, are going, we're not going to carry it. We're not carrying it. And you're going to lose World News Tonight if you keep this up. So Disney's, as all corporations doing, they're looking at the dollar signs here.
There you go.
Is Jimmy Kimmel worth it? Jimmy Kimmel is obviously out of control. He's obviously not getting any counsel from his staff at all. Just like Colbert. They're not going to listen. They're going to hate Trump all day long. But when somebody is murdered, you can't do stuff like that. That doesn't come close to standards that the networks have to conform to by the Federal Communications Commission.
Okay, so that's the part there where I don't know that I'm entirely on the same thought train as Bill O'Reilly. Certainly, the almost basically communism network, yeah, they do have standards that they have to abide by for the FEC or whatever. That's absolutely true. But I don't think that this situation with Jimmy Kimmel is one of those. Because, as I mentioned, all right, was it despicable what he said? Sure. The guy that assassinated Charlie Kirk is definitely not a conservative. He's definitely not a MAGA person. And so he shouldn't have said that. But as far as, and the standards probably go, well, all right, if you're going to say something, you got to be able to verify it, right? You got to prove what you're saying. And you have to be able to, bring the receipts, as they say. All right, so there's no evidence whatsoever that that's that's true in any way. So he didn't do that. It's defamatory. Think about Charlie Kirk's family. I mean, that's obviously defamatory. Then when he goes on to crack all the jokes about President Trump, all right, that probably falls into, his whole comedy shtick or whatever. But really, it's all the bottom line. Now, I don't really think that standards played into the always basically Communism Network's decision to get rid of Jimmy Kimmel. I think it was all money. And I think that Jimmy Kimmel had been a thorn in their side for a long time. And all of these other little stations, and let's not forget how this happened, all these other little stations said, yeah, we're not going to broadcast that anymore. And let me show you what they replaced it with. This is great. This is what they replaced Jimmy Kimmel with. Family Feud. You can't tell me that Family Feud is that big of a moneymaker for Jimmy Kimmel. And what this tells you is that time slot is not very profitable for them anyway. That they were not really going to lose all that much money if they replaced it with Family Feud. So they just picked something off the shelf that said, oh, well, this is kind of fresh. Let's put this on there. That's all it was. And it tells you that Jimmy Kimmel wasn't making them any money. And to leave him on there, it would cost them money because people would stop watching other programs.
You want something fresh, put on I Love Lucy.
Exactly. Well, and again, it's all the dollar numbers. It's all a financial decision. And add on top of it, I think what he said was the icing on the cake. So it's your employee that shows up late, that doesn't do a lot of good work, that, the work that he does do, maybe it makes you a little bit of money. But really, he's the employee that, man, we could do without him. And then they do one thing more. They call into work on a busy Friday night, and you can them.
And some of your customers are calling in saying, I'm not going to keep coming to your place if he's the one waiting on me.
Exactly. There you go. Yeah. He's rude or whatever. But I think that's a perfect analogy. The server that, man, you could replace him with somebody off the street, and it'd probably be a heck of a lot funnier than Jimmy Kimmel. And I think that a lot of the same holds true for some of these other folks too. They're just not funny. And we talked about this yesterday. God, could we please have Johnny Carson back? At least he was good for a laugh. And, or somebody like him. Even Jay Leno was funny. I even thought that David Letterman was funny. His top 10, it always got a pretty good chuckle out of me. So anyway, I think this has more to do with money than anything. And I think to characterize this as a canceling is really missing the boat. And, it's your services are no longer required, and we probably need the sad trombone for, here we go. Services are no longer required, Jimmy Kimmel. Yeah, my heart bleeds for you. So anyway, enough of that crap. So have you ever wondered what all of the letters in LGBTQZXPWDS, I don't know what those stand for, really mean? Well, nobody really knows because they're kind of made up, and I only repeat them because it's fun to poke fun at how many letters they actually add. By the way, that's the whole reason why I do that. LGBTQZXPWDSF agenda. The reason I say it that way is all of those letters are kind of arbitrary, and some of them are kind of contradictory. Oh God, I can't believe I'm going to say this. So one of the topics of conversations with my nephew over the weekend was we were trying to figure out some of these letters, and he said his question was, now wait a minute. So if you're a gay man and you're dating a man who thinks they're a woman, are you still straight? That's how contradictory they are, right? And I am poking fun of it, but maybe this one ought to be a little bit more serious. And this is from The Federalist. Can we finally admit that the T in LGBT stands for terrorism? We've had a lot of shootings recently, and most of them seem to have some connection to the so-called trans community. Here's what The Federalist says, and I quote, The assassination of conservative icon Charlie Kirk proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that the transgender movement is, in fact, a serious domestic terror threat. And this is by Hayden Daniel of The Federalist. Domestic terror threat to Christian conservatives in this country. The revelation that the suspect in Kirk's assassination was romantically involved with a man who identifies as a woman came as both a shock and as an all too common addendum to yet another tragedy. It came as a shock because it's a seemingly bizarre twist in an already perplexing account of the suspect, his upbringing, and the details of his plot. Yet it also came as an almost expected feature of this tragedy because transgender identifying people have become a staple in recent high-profile crimes against conservatives. And I personally, I think that this is a direct response to them hating Jesus. I mean, I think it's an absolute direct affront to anybody who's a Christian because evil, man, if there's one thing evil can't handle, it's the name Jesus Christ. And that's what it is. That's why, I think that that's the main reason. You might be able to prove me wrong, but I think that's one of them. But anyway, the alleged assassin engraved his ammunition with expressions linked to transgender and Antifa ideology. A text message exchange revealed that the alleged assassin had confessed to his boyfriend that he killed Kirk early on in the manhunt, though he is now reportedly cooperating with authorities. And as far as we know, the boyfriend made no attempt to contact law enforcement while the manhunt was ongoing. Instead, the guy's dad turned him in. Can you imagine? I mean, imagine being a dad and having to do that. His dad was a sheriff's deputy, I think I saw reported. Holy cow. And here's the one I heard yesterday that really blew the top of my head off. He negotiated for a safe surrender. He was worried about being shot. Now, wait a minute. You can go shoot somebody else, but we should be nice to you and not knock your door down with a SWAT team? Now, his reason for that is he didn't want his family to go through that. Well, maybe he should have thought about that before he killed somebody. But, I mean, it's just this whole thing just really irritates me.
Did you have an opportunity to read the supposed transcript of the text messages going back and forth?
Part of it.
I don't believe they're authentic. I really don't. It just sounds contrived. I read through it and I thought, this does not sound like real people. This sounds like something that was put together. Okay, call me conspiracy theorist, whatever.
I don't have the conspiracy music loaded up on the soundboard.
Oh no, we do have this. But...
Oh, that's it. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Well, I don't know. I did read part of it, and okay. So the whole situation is weird anyway. And obviously we're not dealing with, see, I had to bring my thermos today because I forgot to go get coffee for the studio. But the whole situation is strange anyway. And I don't think that most normal people, think that way, but maybe it was contrived. Maybe it wasn't. There's a lot of details about this thing that, don't make a lot of sense, except of course that it's evil. And a lot of times evil doesn't make a lot of sense to good people. Now, while the mainstream media, quoting again, played dumb and claimed that the shooter's motive was a mystery, quote unquote, a mystery, the shooter himself spelled it out, literally, on his weapons and in his journal. The shooter's journal also contained demonic drawings, mocked Christians, and reveled in the thought of inflicting violence on children. In both YouTube videos posted prior to the attack and in his journal, the shooter documented his struggle with his so-called trans identity. I regret being trans. I wish I was a girl. I just didn't know I could achieve that body with the technology we have today. I also can't afford that. So, I mean, he goes on and on and on about how disturbed this individual was. And, instead of mourning the deaths of innocent children like decent people did, trans-identifying cretins practically fell over each other in a rush to celebrate the tragedy and call for further violence. More dead Christians, LOL. I mean, we've seen, there's a lot of really deplorable posts that I've seen on social media. And, when you look at the tragedies over the past month or so, well, I guess probably a couple of months, things move pretty fast in news, but a lot of them, that's my coffee, if you're wondering what that sound was. But a lot of them can be linked to so-called trans-identifying people. And I don't believe that there's that many coincidences in the world. And certainly when you have that many of them stacked up in a row, I mean, I don't really think that that's a coincidence either. The article goes on. Trans-identifying people have been in the vanguard of the violent left-wing activists for years now. Punch a TERF, an acronym for Trans Exclusionary Radical Feminists, became a popular slogan after some otherwise liberal women, perhaps most famously J.K. Rowling, began to push back against the radical left's gender madness. They don't shy away from doxing, harassing, or straight up physically attacking people who refuse to bend reality to suit their mental and moral illness. And much like the act of transitioning itself, each new violent act receives nothing but raucous applause from those already lost in the transgender cult. They revel in attacking that which is true and good. And that's what I was referring to when I said that, the main thing that evil can't stand is Jesus's name. And I watched one video, and I don't know if it was associated with this guy or one of the other shooters, but there was a video of a target, and just like if you go to the shooting range, they have the targets in the shape of a man, center mass, head. Well, the head was covered up with a picture of Jesus's face with the crown of thorns. Okay, you can't tell me that that's not evil. Why else would you specifically target Christians? Well, it's evil. That's what it is. So, I think that we should take a serious look at a lot of these folks and ideologies that we're supporting. And I don't know that I'm that far along to say that because you're a trans person, you're somehow terrorist. But all evidence to the contrary on this one, man. There's been a lot of bad stuff that's been linked to that. And that's not to say that all people that think this way are that. But there's a lot of evidence that suggests that.
I just think there's a link in somebody being disturbed and not balanced and never content and unhappy and not wanting to accept the personal blame for that. But it's got to be somebody else's fault that I feel like this, that I am unfulfilled. And then we lie to them. We say, this is okay. We're all going to accept you. And we really don't.
Now, let me be very clear. I know a couple of people that identify in this way. And while I may disagree with their personal choices, and I pray for them, they're perfectly nice people. Okay, so the few folks that I know. And, it's I don't think that there's any question about that. But, when you look at this recent string of shootings, I don't think that we should deny the evidence. It's been a while since we've talked to Jerry in Rock Springs. I think we ought to talk to Jerry. So, Jerry, how you doing this morning, my friend? Been a long time.
Hey, I'm doing really good. How about yourself?
Well, we're doing all right. It's Friday. Can't complain about that. And if we did, nobody would listen. So what's on your mind?
If they did listen, you just have to listen to them back. So.
Yeah, fair enough.
But anyway, on the transgender deal.
Yeah.
I think this is something we've created in the last 50 years, For so long, we was afraid to say that you don't have any choice. You're a man and you're a woman.
Well, that's biology, yeah.
And then... But our culture has taught them you can do and be anything you want to be. And there's so much evil, that it's not like when I was a child. I was warned. My parents were able to say, hey, stay away from this group. But now there's another group every day. So, I feel for these people and, they got to stand before God someday. And they will. And I don't want them saying that I said it was okay to be something you're not.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of this is a direct result of humanism. That, we, as a culture, we have drifted away from faith. And there's been a real push in our culture that you can, man is the measure of all things. And that, your morals don't matter, ethics don't matter. The ethics depend upon the situation. that, given the situation, that might be right or wrong. Well, that's not true. There are facts in this world, facts with a T. And one of those is that we have men and women, and every single person on the face of this planet had a father and a mother. A man and a woman came together, and boom, there's a child. And those are fundamental truths. But there's a real push on the left to deny reality. And I think that you're spot on, Jerry. That we've got to get back to acknowledging the things that are true and real. Ken's got something for you, Jerry.
You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you
Ken.
free. I'm good. I don't think you can hear me, Jerry. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free.
He can hear you. All right. So,
It will.
Yeah. And, one of the things that Charlie Kirk said, shortly before his death, that the greatest love that you can show somebody is to tell them the truth.
And I wish I'd listened. I wish I'd had time to listen to more of what he had to say. My wife, every morning, she was listening to Charlie Kirk. So,
yeah. And yesterday, I got to thinking, I published Charlie Kirk's speech from Laramie, but I don't think that I published.
Yeah.
I don't think I published his back and forth with a lot of the students. And I've been really thinking that I'm going to go back and I'll publish all of that. So, we can get the Charlie Kirk experience, from Laramie, Wyoming. And I really think that I'm going to do that. I don't know if I'll do it tomorrow, but pretty soon.
Good. Yeah, that sounds good. I'd like to see that. But anyway, I need to get, and God bless our republic.
God bless our republic. Thanks for calling, Jerry. If you want to call in and be part of the program, the phone number in the studio is 307-374-8989. 307-374-8989. It's Open Line Friday on the program. Whatever you want to talk about, whatever's been sticking in your craw for the last week or month or whatever, give me a call. 307-374-8989. From the Cow Pie, an article entitled Secretary of Education McMahon Doubles Down on State Control During Jackson Visit. And let me just read you the opening paragraphs here, and I'm going to relate this to something that I just recently wrote for the Sheridan Compress. And I quote, U.S. Secretary of Education Linda McMahon on Thursday toured a Jackson area school championing state control of education while advocating for an end to her own department's role in managing K-12 schools. Accompanied by Wyoming very liberal Governor Mark Gordon, McMahon's visit came as part of her 50-state, quote, returning education to the states tour, which a department spokesperson told Cowboy State the Cow Pie, is intended to empower families and hear from students, teachers, and leaders on best practices in their own communities. Quote, you look at states that have been so successful raising their scores, that's not because of anything that's done at the federal level. McMahon said Thursday, that's because of what's done at the state level. Well, I couldn't agree more. There's nothing in the Constitution, the federal Constitution that is, that says that they should have anything to do with education. In fact, I think that's probably one of those things that the 10th Amendment was talking about.
Just for clarity, you said, as you were reading that, very liberal Mark Gordon.
Yes.
Did you throw that in, or did that article say that?
Do you think the Cow Pie actually said that?
Well, I just wanted clarity.
Yeah, well, no, they wouldn't say that. They're pals. Now, recently, and I'm going to link these two together. Recently, I published an op-ed, or I didn't publish it. I wrote an op-ed and sent it to the Sheridan Compress, and they actually printed it. Maybe they're coming to their senses that their content is normally pretty left-leaning. But it was about my episode a couple of Wednesdays ago that the legislature funded an 8.5% raise for teachers and staff in all of Wyoming schools. And there was only one school district in the entire state, one out of 46 or 48, 43. Okay, anyway, 40s. One school district in the entire state actually did that, and they went above and beyond. They gave their teachers a 10% raise. Every other school district stiffed their teachers on most of their raise, is a way to put it. Here in Sheridan, school district number 3 gave a 3.51% raise, I think. The other two gave in the 6s, but still not 8.5%.
Yeah, Sheridan gave roughly a 3% raise to the teachers.
3.
Yeah, and then turned it around I'm talking about number 2 with a 6. They reported to LSO that they gave 6%. Well, what they did was my understanding is that they changed health insurance providers, and the new provider was a little bit more expensive, so they counted that as part of the raise.
Oh, they did?
That's my understanding is.
That's even more.
It's insidious, isn't
it? They're lying. Not only... Can you get that document?
I believe I can.
Please do. These people. All right. So school districts, basically, the long and the short of it is, for years, they have been blaming the legislature. Well, they don't give us enough money. We can't give you a raise because the legislature won't give us money. Well, here we did. We have tens of millions of dollars to raise this for everybody in the school system. And the school districts didn't give out the raise, and they spent that money elsewhere.
Not just the legislature, but they tried to turn around and pin it on us.
Yeah.
And that is what is so insidious. And even members of the legislature, specifically Tara Nethercott, understands this and yet perpetuate the idea.
Yeah. I mean, they participate in the lie. So my op-ed was pointing this out. Hey, this is, and ironically, I don't know if it's irony, but it's a coincidence for sure. The superintendent of public schools for Sheridan School District number 3 wrote an op-ed that was published in the Sheridan Press that said, we need to fund teachers to 100% of what they're worth. Really? Why didn't you do that when you had the opportunity? My point being is that individual school districts in this state are not paying teachers what they're worth. And so while I agree with Linda McMahon that the federal government doesn't need to have anything to do with education, I think a lot of at least the funding mechanisms for education need to go back to the legislature, because the school districts have already proven that they're not going to fund teachers. And I'd like to find out, just like Sheridan School District number 2 or one of the other ones, where that money went. It is obvious that bill said raise. It didn't say health benefits. It didn't say, pay for your cell phone or give you a car allowance. It said raise. Now, it's true. School districts legally don't have to do what the legislature says, but they shouldn't have to. When your elected representatives specifically author a bill and say, we're going to give you a raise, and from what I recall, Ken, most people voted for that.
Yeah,
even the conservatives.
Yeah, well, it got upped at the last minute, and we had tried for a lower number, and because of the ongoing lawsuit against the schools or against the legislature saying that we're not properly funding education. But see, that's the problem, because constitutionally and now legally, because it's the legislature that is being sued, we're the ones responsible for that. Therefore, if you're going to be responsible, you can't have a middleman in there thwarting your purpose.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what's happening, and that's what has to stop.
Well, and, I was talking with my dad yesterday, and there is no reason why there is such a disparity between what you pay a teacher and what you pay an administrator. Okay, so the administrator has a PhD or whatever. Okay, all right. We can pay them more. But there's no reason why it's $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 difference. That's ridiculous. That's soaking the taxpayer to pay for administration. And in Wyoming, the administration and staff are a significantly higher percentage than actual teachers. There's this one of my favorite statistics, and this is a couple of years ago, but in like 3 or 4 years, the enrollment in Wyoming schools went down about 2,900 students, about 3,000. During that same time period, administration and staff went up 3,600 positions. So not only do you have fewer kids to deal with, and which means that you don't need as much money to educate them because you're 3,000 down, right? At the same time, they hired 3,600 positions in staff, people that don't even teach kids. Staff, and I get it. You need staff to run a school. But the disparity is just ridiculous. And, just like, and it's the converse of what McMahon is trying to do, that, the federal government needs to get the heck out of the public school business. But at the same time, we need to do something in Wyoming too. Yesterday, day before, I stopped by the salon to visit the lovely Christine, and one of her clients used to teach in a Colorado school. And we were talking about it. Just so happened that the op-ed came out, and we were talking about it. And she was amazed that how we fund education. And she even pointed out, she's like, look, Colorado spends less per student than you do, and our scores are higher. And South Dakota spends way less than we do, and their scores are higher. So don't tell me that it's a money thing. It's not.
When did the federal government get into public education? It was in the 70s.
Jimmy Carter.
Yeah, I want to say it was in the late 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And until that time, most of my career in public school was not covered by the feds. So since that time, how much better have things gotten? What's the return on investment for having a federal Department of Education?
The return on investment is negative returns. And actually, yeah, let's go ahead and take a break. And when we come back, we'll return to Open Line Friday. But the first guy, Ken, to suggest to Department of Education was Andrew Johnson, in between him taking drinks. We'll be back in a minute. It's spring-ish in Wyoming. Well, what that means for the uninitiated is that it's going to be 70 degrees one day and then snow 1.5 feet the next. And really, if you don't like those two options, just wait a little bit. The weather will change. I know, it sounds a little stressful, but really you should put your mind at ease and buy a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They'll keep you warm and dry even on the nastiest, coldest spring-ish day, and they'll keep you cool and dry even when it's 75 and sunny. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you're not going to be disappointed. Are you one of those guys that listen to the president just a little bit too closely, and now you're tired of winning? Are you getting the feeling that there's been way too many good things happening in our country and you just can't take it anymore? Well, if you are, and you think you should follow Rosie O'Donnell's example and get the heck out of Dodge, you need to call Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She'll make those foreign country living ideas a reality for you. All you have to do is call 307-699-3519, and she'll make sure some freedom-loving, red-blooded American will now live in the home that you no longer want. If you want to sell your house, or if you want to buy one that's way better than the house you have right now, give Rebecca a call. Again, her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Cowboy State Politics is only getting stronger. If you missed the program, I got something new for the left. I built an app. You're absolutely going to love it. I announced it on the program, but it's going to be released October 1st. I'm still doing a little tweaks to it, but really excited about it. One thing they really can't stand is any sort of opposition, which, that's what this whole program is about. It's Open Line Friday on Cowboy State Politics Live. The phone number in the studio is 307-374-8989. 307-374-8989. Whatever's on your mind, whatever you've been thinking about, whatever you're irritated about, go ahead and hit me with it. I mean, it's like Ken and his off the wall sound bites. I mean, he just every once in a while he just pulls one out and, hey, what are you gonna do with this one, Dave? Check this out. Well, did you know, Ken, that if you commit a crime, that doesn't make you a criminal? I mean, have you ever heard that if you're committing a crime, it's just It's what you meant. It's what your intent is.
Actually, I heard that yesterday, fresh. Yeah. See, I do some show prep too.
Well, I'm glad. I need all the help I can get. I think everybody can see that. From Breitbart News, Jasmine Crockett claims committing a crime doesn't make a person a criminal. Well, yeah, I mean, guns don't commit crime. Anyway, Jasmine Crockett claimed that just because people commit crimes, it doesn't make them a criminal, adding that it depends on the person's mindset. During an interview with genderqueer Netflix star Jonathan Van Ness, wow, there's a whole bunch we could talk about there. Crockett was asked about having worked as a public defender. I can't imagine Yasmine Crockett as a lawyer. I mean, she's dumb enough as a congressman, and you don't have to have a lot of brains to be a congressman. I mean, some of them are brilliant, like our own, but there are a lot of them that are they're dumb as a post. She's one of them.
Who's the gal in Texas that wears the red cowboy hats?
She's dead.
Oh, I was just talking to her yesterday. Maybe
I
learned that from Biden.
What the heck is her name? What's her name?
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. All right, end up. So back to Crockett. She says, quote, "It's just understanding what ends up having people become criminally impacted really informs so much about what I do legislatively. I would like to know what she does legislatively." So when people are like, crime is terrible, I say, yes, it is. Because when somebody goes out and commits a crime, they don't typically say, well, I'm a D, I'm an R, I'm an I. It's not like literally like it's about how do you fix it? How do you make communities safer? I don't even know what that means. I've read articles that Yasmine Crockett is more interested in her Facebook followers, or I guess it's probably not Facebook for her. It's probably Insta or TikTok. But Crockett continued to explain that as a public defender, she was in a unique situation because she had conversations with people who were going out and committing crimes, but that doesn't make them a criminal, remember, and was able to understand that what was pushing them to commit these crimes. And so I do want people to know that just because someone has committed a crime, that doesn't make him a criminal. Watch this.
Understanding what ends up having people become criminally impacted really informs so much of what I do legislatively, right? So when people are like, oh, crime is terrible. And yes, it is, right? Like, because when somebody goes out and commits a crime, they don't typically, say, well, I'm a D or I'm an R, I'm an I. It's not like literally like, it's about, well, how do you fix it? How do you make communities safer? And I do think that I'm in a unique situation because I was having the conversations with people that were going out and committing crimes. And so I understood what was kind of pushing them there. And so I do want people to know that just because someone has committed a crime, it doesn't make them a criminal. That is completely different. Being a criminal is more so about your mindset. Committing a crime can come for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah, but it's just your mindset. That doesn't really make you a criminal. Oh boy. Yeah, if you are the classic example that that was often brought up when I was studying philosophy at school was, all right, so if you are the dad and your family is starving and you don't have any money, and so you've decided to go out and steal a loaf of bread, does that make you a criminal? Well, we have a crime against theft. You've taken somebody else's property. So yes, that's a crime. And then the justification for it is, well, no, you were doing it for a good reason. Yeah, that still makes it a crime. We live in a nation of laws, not a nation of men. And that scenario is set up to directly to foster relativistic ethics. That's where it's headed.
Yeah, it's that kind of thinking that we're seeing in response to Charlie Kirk's murder. In this case, it was justified. I mean, the guy.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly where it goes. Well, now how that is supposed to be handled in our system is judges have discretion. Now, I would argue that most of the judges we have now are using way too much discretion, even in Wyoming, even here in Sheridan County. I like one of our judges a lot. I'm not going to call her out, but I think that there's a lot of probation she hands out when, some more severe penalties are absolutely warranted. But the reason why judges have discretion is to listen to those mitigating circumstances. All right, so you were the dad with a hungry family, and you went and stole a loaf of bread. It's still a crime. You still stole from somebody. You still didn't pay for it. So, yeah, you do get to pay for that crime. But, maybe it's not the maximum penalty. Maybe it wasn't aggravated. In our statutes, we have all levels of crime. The easiest one to understand is murder. There's several different types of murder. There's involuntary manslaughter. Okay, you didn't mean to do it. You still killed somebody, though. There's manslaughter. There's first-degree murder. There's second-degree murder. There's third-degree murder. And all of those depend on the intent behind your crime. Like, did you intend to kill this person? First-degree murder is a premeditated, planned out. Yep, you absolutely planned it out. You malice aforethought, all of that stuff. So all of those things are already built into our system. So, I think that one of my favorite movies, and it figures I forget the title, but there's a phrase in there that sometimes, it's called Primal Fear. That's the name of the movie. It's got Richard Gere in it. But he says in there, I think that sometimes some really, really good people do some really, really bad things. But even if you're a good person, you commit a crime, that still makes you a criminal. It still means that you committed a crime. And now the hope is that, with our system, that you learn from your mistake and you don't do it again. But it still doesn't erase the crime doesn't erase the act. And that's why our system is set up the way that it is. But Yasmin Crockett, her argument is trying to reinforce this idea of relativism, that depending on the situation, well, things might be right and things might be wrong. That's where you get a lot of these other really terrible societal ills. That the truth really doesn't matter. That the truth is, it's your truth, it's my truth. It's it's all relative, Ken. What's your truth, Ken?
Words mean things. We could play the Rush soundbite, but we don't need to because everybody's got it memorized. What she probably meant to say, and would have been better expressing it, was just because you commit a crime doesn't mean you're a bad person. Because she's equating.
That's true.
She's equating
Sometimes.
being a criminal with being a bad person. But words do mean things, and they need to be used properly.
Well, I have one thing to say about Yasmin Crockett.
Horse crap.
Exactly. So, we got to get back to being a nation of laws and not a nation of men. And, if we could start doing that, we could fix a lot of the other things that are amiss in our society. But think about it, right? How many things that are absolutely facts that people are trying to manipulate? That men can become women or can become a trout or a giraffe or, an elephant or, well, I do know some people that resemble an elephant, but the point is there are some things that are true. There are some things that are not true. And all of this is an effort to, try to reinforce relativism.
I know some that resemble a rhino.
I know a lot of rhinos. Actually, last night, I went to the Chuck Gray Town Hall in Buffalo. And anytime one of our statewide elected officials is around, I'd like to go listen to what they had to say. But what really struck me is the gal that was hosting it. She's an immigrant from Canada. And I think I'm going to go ahead and play. I don't have the soundbite ready, but I'm going to play it probably on the podcast tomorrow. I really liked what she had to say. That she says the biggest problem we have is rhinos, people that campaign as Republicans and really are Democrats. So from the Washington Free Beacon, embarrassment for PMS NBC and the Communist News Network as upstart News Nation wins out in primetime ratings. Now, okay, so the Communist News Network, been around for a long time. PMS NBC, that was a creation of a partnership between NBC and Microsoft. That's what the MS stands for, or used to stand for, in the 1990s. I mean, they've been around a long time, and now little old News Nation is edging them out. The flailing liberal networks fell short in the coveted 25 to 54 age demographic, which, by the way, is the main demographic of this program. Also, lots of people listen that are in that age group. So News Nation An upstart, middle-of-the-road network embarrassed the Communist News Network and PMSNBC by beating the liberal legacy networks in the coveted 25 to 54 age demographic. News Nation averaged 44,000 viewers in the age group during the 8 p.m. hour when it ran its special report, The Killing of Charlie Kirk. According to the Nielsen Media Research, the Communist News Network, of a rerun of Real Time with Bill Maher, fell far short of that at 38,000 viewers. Now, okay, so we live in a country of around 300 million people. 300 million. And there's only 44,000 that are watching News Nation, and then 38,000 that are watching PMSNBC. So we're not talking about a big demographic, but they beat them nonetheless. So a win is a win, right? While PMSNBC's The Weekend Primetime only averaged 32,000 during its report, News Nation confirmed that Kirk was not wearing a bulletproof vest. Okay, yeah. So both networks lost to News Nation even outside of the network's special. During the 7 p.m. hour, News Nation Prime with Natasha Zuvis earned 34,000 average viewers in the age group, beating CNN's Newsroom by about 5,000, according to Nielsen Media Research. PMSNBC's loss is just the latest blow for the network. Later this year, it's being spun off from Comcast, its parent company, and is being rebranded as My Source News Opinion World, or Ms. Now. Just it's absolutely ridiculous. That's the name they chose, Ms. Now.
They should have just used NAG, the
NAG.
National Association of Gals.
You know, actually, there is an association, and their acronym actually is the NAGs. It's the National Association of Attorneys General. Just ridiculous. Now, here's a story that I've been meaning to tell you about. And I just really haven't had, all right, so let me just roll this whole thing out. So in my family, I'm kind of the family historian. I'm the guy that's got all of the kind of cool family documents, not all of them, but a lot of them. One of them is my Grandpa Iverson's service record. He was in Pearl Harbor, though not when the Japanese attacked, but that's where he was stationed. He was a radio guy, kind of a technology geek. Weird. That I would be, his grandson would be doing this. Anyway, I've got all the documents, and one of my favorite are the immigration documents from my grandpa Domingo. He emigrated from the Pyrenees Mountains to Wyoming early on. I think in the 1920s, 1913 is when he started. But I've got all those documents, and one of them is a practice test that he took to become a U.S. citizen. And I thought this morning when I was doing show prep, I thought, I'll bring it to the studio and show you. But it's pretty fragile. And I was really worried that, things get kind of busy during the program and I didn't want to make a misstep. So I'll show that to you, but I'm going to have to do a little prep. But I found this story. It's from the Daily Wire. Trump revives 12-question citizenship test that Biden said created barriers for immigrants. And I quote, the Trump administration is changing the tests that immigrants must take to become a citizen to ensure that only those with the ability to read, write, and speak English and understand U.S. government and civics are able to naturalize. Quote, American citizenship is the most sacred citizenship in the world and should only be reserved for aliens who will fully embrace our values and principles as a nation. U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services spokesperson Matthew Tregesser said Wednesday. He added that the changes are so that the American people can be assured that those joining us as fellow citizens are fully assimilated. Okay, so the problem with this is the test is only 12 questions. Now, in truth, judges have great discretion when it comes to the citizenship test in their particular jurisdiction. A lot of discretion. But I did find something that, and I want to throw this up on the screen, Ken. This is the Civics, History, and Government questions for the naturalization test. And this revision, you can see, is from January of 2019. So Trump was still the president. Now, remember, you only have to answer 12 of these. But let's just run through some of them here, and I'll just pick one at random. There's 100 questions. Under our Constitution, some powers belong to the states. What is one power of the states? provide schooling, and this practice test, it gives you the answers. So this is a study guide, basically. What is the political party of the president right now? Okay. What is the name of the Speaker of the House of Representatives now? What are two major political parties? Now, if you scroll up here, one of the things that, let me see if I can find it here. There's a whole section that talks about your local politicians or your local elected officials. And it's, here we go. Who is one of your U.S. state senators? The House of Representatives has how many veterans? Name your U.S. representative. Who does a U.S. senator represent? Why do some states have more representatives than other states? But it goes on, and there's 100 questions. Now, in the original test, the one that I have for my grandfather, you literally have to list your local representatives. Who is your state representative? Who is the mayor? I mean, there's a lot of it that I think if most people were confronted with it, they wouldn't be able to pass it. But there's only 12 questions that are selected out of this list of 100. And so it's my understanding that when the test is administered, and I think it says here in the article, let's see here. The Trump administration said the tests are administered orally, and prospective citizens can stop taking the test as soon as they answer 12 questions correctly, and that the necessary study materials will be available online. So this is what I showed you as the study materials. Quote, demonstration of English and civics knowledge is essential to showing an alien's commitment to fulfill the rights and responsibilities. Okay, I don't think it goes that far. I think that our problems of assimilation go well beyond being able to pass a test. Though, I do think it's interesting that you have 100 possible questions and you only have to answer 12 of them correctly, but it's administered orally. So presumably, whomever's administering the test just picks some of them.
I found it really interesting in the beginning of that. The complaint was that it created barriers.
Uh-huh.
And what I see there is that, in fact, it doesn't create barriers. It prepares someone to overcome the barriers of living in this society and being successful.
Yeah.
For example, can you speak English? If you can't speak English in America, you're going to be disadvantaged.
Yeah.
And if we go around and we try to compensate and make provision for everybody, we're actually crippling them. No, go ahead, figure out how to function in this society and not be held back by the fact that people are going to resent the fact that you can't speak English, and it's going to be an inhibitor. So that's just more of that idea of they're ignoring truth, and the world ought to be this way.
It goes back to the difference between assimilation and multiculturalism. All right, so you have to be pretty fluent with all these questions, and I think, let's see here, let's go down to the end here. All right, so could you answer this one? What did Susan B. Anthony do?
She posed for a portrait that we use on the dollar coin.
She did do that. That's true. That's absolutely true. But that's one of the questions in the citizenship test. Name one problem that led to the Civil War. This one should be pretty easy. Slavery, economic reasons, states' rights. I mean, all of those would be acceptable answers, I think, there. Though one of them more than the others. I mean, it was all about slavery. And if you didn't know, every state that seceded from the Union listed slavery as the number one reason that they seceded from the Union. Who was president during World War I?
Walter Cronkite.
Yes. You are not going to become a citizen, Agent 29. What major event happened? Well, we all know that one, September 11th. What movement tried to end racial discrimination? Pretty easy. Before he was president, Eisenhower was a general. What war was he in?
Revolutionary.
Yes.
He goes way back.
Yeah, he's way back there. What ocean is on the east coast of the United States?
That depends on where you're standing.
Yeah, it's the
could be the Gulf of America.
It is the Gulf of America. That's true. Name one state that borders Mexico. Wyoming, definitely.
If you have an interstate, you do.
All right. Now, those might be kind of difficult questions if you're not, if you failed civics class in high school. What about this one? Why does the flag have 13 stripes?
It looks pretty.
That's true. Yes, that's unfortunately, that would be a failing answer. Yeah, that would not work. Name 2 national holidays.
The 4th of July.
Yes.
What a dumb name for a holiday.
Yeah, I don't know. Independence Day is what it's called.
Halloween.
Yes, that's true. So we know that we need to revoke Agent 29 citizenship. But my point in all of this is that it is not that, I mean, the process to become a U.S. citizen is long. In fact, I think that it needs to be far shorter. I'm not saying that you should be able to do it in like a couple months, but I think that 5 years is a little extreme. But you do need to study this test, and you do need to be able to answer 12 questions.
It's also very expensive, and it needs
true.
to be streamlined. And we've said this several times. If there are issues with the law, then you change the law and you correct that. You don't just choose to ignore law.
Yeah, and that's what the Biden administration did, and maybe not. And given enough rope, they would have changed our entire system of immigration. But I do think that it's interesting that a lot of these questions. I bet if and maybe we ought to do this, Ken. We'll grab a microphone and go do some man on the street and just say, "Hey, I've got this citizenship test here. Can you answer some of the questions?"
That would be fun. We do have somewhere in this place, we've got the equipment to be able to pull that off nicely. So maybe another third Thursday if there's any left.
Yeah, no, I think that was the last one.
That's what I thought. So,
but we could go walk around downtown and do some man on the street stuff.
That'd be fun. We actually did that with the Ramble Room a while back, and we had some really fun stuff.
Oh well, and it's you never know what's going to happen. Actually, we should wait until the Democrats hold one of their protests. And then we should go down and ask them. I bet most of them don't know. Speaking of the Democrats and their protests, I think I told you on the podcast that maybe I didn't. Maybe I haven't even talked about this. But there was we talked about it yesterday on the program. That it was they've issued a statement about the Charlie Kirk thing, and now they've issued another statement. Let me just find this one because, Ken, I have a feeling that you're going to want to say something about this. Though, I mean, it is my show, so maybe. You push the buttons over there. So, wait, I gotta hold on here. So, what do you think they're issuing a statement about now, Ken? What do you think?
I couldn't predict what they do.
Well, it's very difficult. They do have a lot of ads on 94.9 now. But listen to this one. Now, this one's all about free speech. And I want you to take this to heart. And it says, Wyoming's Freedom Caucus has already used its power to turn this tragedy into a McCarthy-style witch hunt. How dare you? Targeting first the university's student newspaper, then a grad student who provided a quote they didn't like. This is part of the problem, threatening librarians and teachers, dictating what can be taught in classrooms, silencing people they don't agree with. The goal is the same, no control over what to control what we can say, read, and think. That's not freedom, and that's not something the folks in this state are okay with. How dare you, Agent 29?
Guilty as charged, whatever.
All right, so first, no. As we covered in the first half hour of this program, the Wyoming Freedom Caucus is not using this tragedy to go after people. However, to perhaps expose those folks who may not be so genuine about their renunciation of the horrible events of last week. Well, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to dig through this thing and show you exactly what they're talking about, because they're Democrats, and most of the time they don't tell you the truth. So we'll do that next. Are you tired of all the meaningless political drivel floating around right now? Endless commentary that really doesn't have anything backing it up? Do you long for the days of true investigative journalism coming from an authoritative source who really doesn't care how popular and apparently good-looking a politician is? Fortunately for you, that's what I do on Cowboy State Politics. New episodes are published every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and you can get them anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest way is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There, you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles I might bring up during the course of the program. Cowboy State Politics Live, the program you're listening to right now, is broadcast every Tuesday through Friday, beginning at 8 a.m. Pay attention to all of that other block-headed nonsense if you want. Just make sure that you don't miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live on a Friday, open line Friday. If you want to be part of the show, the phone number is 307-374-8989. 307-374-8989. Well, Christine and I got some good news last night. Our friend and fan of Cowboy State Politics, Ms. Carmen, is back on U.S. soil. She landed last night in Texas, and it's like I think that Christine put it best that she hasn't been this relieved in a really long time. So welcome home, Ms. Carmen Crine. She's been over in Jordan for a year, so she's got to spend about 10 days at Fort Bliss, and then she'll be back in the home state of Wyoming. So congratulations! Thank you for your service. Thank you for making the choices that I didn't make, and welcome home. So before the break, we were talking about these idiotic Democrats. And so the first thing is they say that attacking a student newspaper for what they printed, well, that just means you're McCarthy. Now, let me just go. I got to go back on my phone and find something that Agent 29 sent me about this whole incident. Well, we talk a lot. Here we go. Okay, so the branding iron, the UW newspaper, they printed, and let me just read the whole paragraph to you here. But this was printed in the branding iron the day after Charlie Kirk's assassination. And I quote, "Politically, I opposed him. Personally, I despised him. That does not mean that I feel like he deserved this. I don't think he deserved this at all. The way you fight speech you disagree with is with more speech, never with censorship or violence." Another student took a hardline pro-violence stance on Kirk, stating, and listen to this, this is despicable, "I think that he deserved it. Having a family doesn't give you the right to dedicate your life to removing minority group rights. Punching fascists is not a right, but a duty, and I think shooting them is too." That was printed in the UW student newspaper. Now, obviously, they platformed that person. They didn't say who it was for obvious reasons, because I don't think that he or she would have had that great of a reception. But that's what the Democrats are referring to, targeting targeting first the university newspaper. Well, I don't know that any conservatives are targeting the student newspaper, except to say they printed something that's absolutely despicable.
I think what we were saying, yeah, this person had every right to say that. But common decency would seem to say, let's not just repeat ugly. Let's take a step back. Let's let things settle down. Like you said, it was the day after. It just seemed in very poor taste. As me as an editor, I'm not going to print that.
Yeah. Well, and I think I told you yesterday, I banned somebody off the Cowboy State Politics page for posting something despicable yesterday. So I think that you're right, Ken, that common decency dictates that you don't, I mean, come on. Really?
Yeah, you have a right to speak, but I have a right not to listen.
Yeah.
Or to, as you mentioned in the article, they gave them a platform.
Yeah.
We have a right not to do that.
And that's exactly what they did. They gave this type of disgusting, hate-filled rhetoric a platform. Then the Democrats go on. This is part of a pattern, threatening librarians and teachers, dictating what can be taught in class. Okay, so let's take the librarians and teachers business. First of all, for a long time, there has been straight-up pornography in Wyoming schools and in public libraries. That is an undeniable fact, and anybody who says otherwise is full of crap. It is a fact. The very first book that I investigated when this whole thing broke years ago in Gillette was a book called Lawn Boy. It is a book that has the most disgusting depiction of two fourth-grade boys, and it's graphic too. I'm not. It is. I mean, it is really bad. And I found it in an elementary school in Carbon County. So there are pornographic books in libraries in reach of children. No, I'm not. Okay, so let me just. Nobody is saying ban these books. What we are saying, however, is move them out of the children's section. There's a book called Gendered Queer. It's a comic book, and I'm telling you, my friends, it's graphic. Don't go buy that book. You'll probably end up on a list, but you don't want to read it anyway. It's absolutely horrendous. So yeah, that's absolutely true. Dictating what can be taught in classrooms. Well, if we are going to have public education, yeah, the people that pay for it should get a say in what gets taught there.
Yeah, we are constitutionally required to fund this, but we are also required in Article 7, Section 20 to uphold morality.
Mm-hmm. Well, this next charge, Ken, I think this is you all the way, man. I've seen. No, I haven't. Silencing people you disagree with. You've been doing a lot of that lately, right? You and your cadre of friends.
Yeah, that's what I call it, the mute button. No, but that goes right back to what I just said. We're not silencing anybody. We're just saying we're not going to listen to it. We're not going to provide that platform.
Right. Now, here's the other problem here. With the Democrats went from one day denouncing violence, which, by the way, many of them really shouldn't even be talking about that. Carly Provenza. And the very next thing they put out is a straight up political attack on the Wyoming Freedom Caucus and conservatives more generally. I mean, that's what they mean. And that it really doesn't have anything. There's no recognition of, the event that led up to this. There's no recognition that, hey, like I said at the beginning of the program, you have a right to free speech. You don't have a right to a television show. You don't have a right to be quoted in the newspaper. It's just ridiculous. I mean, Democrats, they really are not telling you the truth on so many different levels.
Yeah, it's funny. You don't have a right to be quoted in the newspaper. They actually came and did an interview with me about the Department of Health committee that's coming up, and not a crickets. They never published anything.
Nothing, huh?
I have not seen an article anywhere in the state that mentions that at all.
You know what that tells me is that they know that there's a huge amount of graft in there, and they don't want it publicized. You see, that's the media's. They have two tactics. The first one, ignore it. If it's not published in any of the liberal media outlets and they ignore whatever story it is, it doesn't matter. The classic one is training drag queens at the University of Wyoming. I had the university dead to rights on that one. There was no way that they could get out of that argument. There's no way that they could get out of that story, and it wasn't covered anywhere. Ignore it, and it goes away. Well, it didn't go away. It actually made some changes at the university, which I'm super proud of. But just ignore it, and the story goes away. The other one is to blame the Freedom Caucus. That's their other option.
The questions that they asked in the interview were, what are you looking for? They desperately wanted to know where we're, Department of Health has a big budget. What are you looking for? Tell us what you're looking for. Well, that'd be stupid. You're going to tip your hand and tell them. So I just said, we're looking for everything. We can't make an educated decision without looking at everything. So that's what we were trying to do. And that wasn't what they wanted to hear, so they wouldn't publish anything. I think they just wanted to be able to warn anybody in the department, cover your tracks, because this is where they're coming.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's exactly what it is. But, I mean, you got to look at the whole thing. And when a little state like Wyoming has an $11.5 billion budget, and 1/4 of that is the Department of Health, holy crap. Do you suppose perhaps that there are some rainbow tote bags that are being bought for the month of June by county Department of Health offices? Do you suppose maybe that's something that we ought to take a look at?
I won't say what I found, but I will say I am finding some things that should raise some eyebrows.
Just raise some eyebrows? Or are we talking like me needing, several more rolls of duct tape? Where are we at on this? Come on.
Well, RAZE. You're going to shave your eyebrows off.
It's just going to explode. Yeah. All right. So a couple more stories here from Breitbart News. Manchin urges Democrats to end their quest for raw political power. I have mixed feelings about Joe Manchin. I don't. Now, first, having lived in that area of the world, I can tell you that you cannot be during the time that I lived there, which was, from about 2006 to, I'm going to say, 2017, something like that, roughly 10 years. And so at that time, you couldn't really be a wacko Democrat and get elected in West Virginia. Now, Joe Manchin had been the governor of West Virginia for a long time. He's the one that had the cap and trade bill, and he shot it with his rifle. That was a super popular ad, even though Joe Manchin pretty much voted in lockstep with the Democrats. So, he's one of those that I like what he says. I don't like how he votes because he pretty much voted with the Democrats. But here's what he says in Breitbart. Wednesday, or to Fox Business. Wednesday on Fox Business Network's Mornings with Maria, former Senator Joe Manchin reiterated his call from his memoir for Democrats to end their quest for so-called raw political power. According to the former Democrat turned independent U.S. Senator, he had wanted Republicans to win the Senate majority in 2024 to preserve the filibuster. Quote, former West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin recalling his days under the Biden presidency, where he says that the Democrats were on a quest for, quote, raw political power. The former Democrat turned independent saying this, quote, because of what I knew and what I had seen firsthand, I wanted Republicans to win the Senate majority in 24. I believed it was the only hope for preserving the Senate as an institution. I truly believe that. If in power, Republicans would uphold the filibuster, the last guardrail preventing total partisan rule. Manchin continued, I was watching up close and personal when Chuck U. Schumer basically had said he wanted to get rid of the filibuster. It was myself and Kyrsten Sinema that refused to do that, to get rid of it back in 2021. Then that changed everything. They had to work with the other side. The Senate is basically set up that the minority has to have input. The House, it's not that way. They go on raw, simple majority, 218. Do whatever you want if you have the Democrat or Republican control, and the Senate has always been to calm things down, cool it off. Okay, so when our system was designed, our founders set out to create a system where the House, just like Manchin said, was kind of supposed to be sort of raucous, right? I mean, you're the people directly responsible to the people. You got to run for election every 2 years. You hold the purse strings. So it was almost intentionally set up to be kind of a raucous group of people. The Senate, on the other hand, the idea was to create kind of a calming environment. And it was described as the House of Representatives being the teacup itself. You pour the tea in and it gets super hot. But the saucer is meant to cool off the tea. And I know it's a quaint metaphor, but that's how it was described, that the Senate is the saucer that cools down the cup. And it's pretty easy to understand how that was to work. The state legislature selected U.S. senators. And so those senators should be kind of apart from the more political centered rhetoric and actions that you have to do when you're campaigning, right? They were kind of, a step above that. Each state has 2 U.S. senators. And so it doesn't really depend on population. So every state is equal. And they had different rules, like the filibuster. The filibuster is you have to have, it's called a cloture, right? You have to have 60 votes for a bill to move forward. Well, that protects the rights of the minority in the chamber. Unless you have a super majority in the Senate, things happen really, really slowly. And the idea being, well, everybody's got to work together to get stuff done. Well, if you eliminate the filibuster, legislation can move through with 51 votes. And that would mean, as Manchin said, that they could do whatever they want, that there's nothing stopping them. There's no way to protect the rights of the minority. And this is something that real Republicans in Wyoming should understand firsthand, because for decades, I would say the last 50 years, Conservatives have not been in power. And, so what happened at least in the House of Representatives is even if you had a good bill and you were a Republican, the chances of you were a conservative rather, the chances of you getting that pushed through were slim to none. They would just ignore you because they didn't have to have your vote. And I think probably your first session, Ken, there was some of that because we didn't have the majority. But this past session, conservatives were in power. And, my hope was they wouldn't run the chamber as the Democrats had, the redcoats. But in some respects, I think that they did a little bit. And one piece of evidence is Mike Yin. Mike Yin ended up being one of the more conservative voters in the chamber simply because none of his wacko liberal bills hit the floor. So he didn't get a chance to vote on those. He didn't vote for any of your conservative stuff. And when spending measures got jammed into other bills, he didn't vote for those either. And so when you vote no, and this is ironic, but if you vote no most of the time, you're going to be a conservative. And that's where Mike Yin ended up. And so, to some degree, I think that, and definitely not as much as Chicom Som or Steve Harshman or Eric Barlow, but to some degree, there was a little of that. Though, generally speaking, I think that Speaker Nyman did a pretty good job of herding the cats. I think that there was some strategic errors that he made along the way. But all in all, not too bad. Let's see here. You know what? Let's have kind of a fun story. We don't get to do that very often. So there were some hobbyists in Europe, and they were searching for old rockets. And they accidentally unearthed incredible ancient treasures buried deep below the ground. And this is a piece I got off of Fox News this morning. Treasure hunters were searching for World War II rockets when they uncovered medieval pots. No, not your pot head, not that type of pot. Treasure hunters in Poland from a group called Dinar Kaliz found clay pots containing 631 medieval artifacts, silver coins, and an 1,800-year-old Roman gold necklace worth invaluable sums. The group of metal detectorists recently went on an epic summer-long adventure in the European countryside, and they discovered this jackpot. The group was actually searching for German V-2 rockets when they stumbled on their first treasure. Quote, "Our association is a group of friends who love uncovering history, and we do it as a hobby, and we end up doing just that." The first find discovered by them was a clay pot filled with treasure. It had coins, ornaments, and silver ingots from the Middle Ages containing 631 artifacts. These included cross denari foreign coins, such as English ones, from the reign of King Harold I of England, as well as German, Hungarian, Czech coins, and others. And I think I've got a picture here of, it's this one. So this was the first find, and you can see right here, this one is a chunk of gold. This one is a rock. You can see some of the gold on it, and then some of the other coins. But imagine being out with your metal detector, and you're like, oh, there's a pop can or a beer can buried here, and you unearth it, and it's a bunch of silver coins. And then there's this one. The picture on the left, that's the gold necklace. Now this thing, and just roll with me on the numbers here. This thing was 222 grams of gold. Now there's 28.4 grams to an ounce. And so that gold necklace was 7 ounces of gold. And at the spot price, I checked it this morning, and it's $3,600 an ounce. So that gold necklace is worth $28,000 just for the gold. Now, it's worth significantly more in its historical value, but just the gold itself. And so they found a whole bunch more. That was just the one gold pot. So there was, let's see here, if it tells me.
Put that picture back up for a second so I can bring it up here.
Yeah.
On the right, that looks like a thimble, but it's probably not.
Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't really say what that one was. Yeah, it's a gold necklace. They don't really say what that artifact is, but it's interesting. Could be a thimble, could be any number of things. Let's hear the rest of this piece. Says the group leader added that he cooperates with professional archaeologists and in Poland and at other places. He said the group has an international following, including some American fans. We're very proud of this. It gives us great confidence. Okay, blah blah blah. So anyway, kind of cool. They found a whole bunch of different artifacts. And, I've got a metal detector, though I've never found anything of, significant value at all, really.
There's a group here in Sheridan that has always interested me, and I like to have them over to the house sometime because my house place was built in 1910, back when everybody had a privy. And they have the old maps, and they know where all the outhouses were.
Outhouses,
and they go dig, and they find all sorts of things in there. And I thought, man, I just wonder.
Yeah, well, I know a lot of people that, part of the Historical Society, and I've heard that when they find the site where the outhouse is, that's like a treasure trove. The all sorts of old bottles and different things. Thinking, I don't even want to go there. That's terrible. All right, so last piece here from The Blaze. Florida man accused of threatening to personally assure all conservatives are systematically erased. Now, I wish I would have got a picture of this guy because you just take one look at him and you're like, yeah, this is not the dude that is going to systematically erase all conservatives. But here's what the piece says. Quote, he allegedly used a term that refers to the government killing its own people, and that term is democide. It's the first time I had ever heard the term. A Florida man was arrested by the FBI when the FBI received a tip from a man's high school friend about alarming posts posted to social media. When police confronted Michael Whitehead at his apartment in Fort Myers about the threatening messages, the 27-year-old allegedly admitted that the account belonged to him, and he wrote the threatening messages. Here's one of them. Quote, I personally will do everything I can to democide Republicans. And here's another one. All American conservatives will be systematically erased. I personally will do everything I can to democide Republicans. Seems to me that he's caught up on that word.
He's confused too, because if it's democide, no further comment.
Yeah, exactly. Now, the woman who tipped off the FBI had taken screenshots of what he had posted. White House was arrested on September 10th by the Fort Myers Police Department and released on bond the next day with restrictions that included surrendering his firearm and wearing a GPS monitor. So this is another case where, this guy's threatening to kill people. Now, I don't know, judges have to decide the credibility of said threat and is this guy actually a danger? But, he's publicly said that he's going to kill conservatives. Now, democide, that's the government killing people. So I don't know, like I said, he got caught up on the term. His attorney, and here's the fascinating part. This is where we're at, Ken. His attorney, Michael Hornung, told the Gulf Coast News that the incident was simply a misunderstanding arising from poor judgment. Quote, what can be misconstrued, especially with politics nowadays? I can understand the fever that is out there. Political violence of any kind, and this is the guy from the Democrat Party, which democide, never mind. It was acceptable on the left. It is not acceptable on the right, and it's not a way to run a democracy. Okay, so the reason I bring this up is we talked a lot on the program about, what happened last week and where this sort of stuff is coming from. Now, while I will admit there are crazy people on both sides, Democrats and Republicans, it doesn't really look to me like a lot of this is coming from the right. I love the pictures. I've seen a lot of them on social media, and there's a picture of the George Floyd riots where, cities are burning, and it says, Democrats' response. And the next one was a bunch of people praying, after the Charlie Kirk thing. And I'm not saying that's all Democrats, but what I am saying, though, is if you are serious about toning down the rhetoric, I think that you should lead by your example. Don't issue a statement that just outright doesn't say the truth about Republicans. Just, stick the knife in and twist it. That's, pun intended, because that's kind of what Democrats are doing. If you want to have a real conversation, let's have one. I told you yesterday, I called the Democrat chairwoman in Sheridan County. I had to leave a message because she didn't answer the phone, and I invited her to come on the program. And, well, she didn't. And, I mean, her loss. But, we've had a couple of different Democrats. I think one definite Democrat and the other one probably leans more to the left. But we can have a conversation. But instead of just, but you got to be willing to, right? You can't just sit on the sidelines where the Wyoming Democrats are and snipe from the. See, none of these metaphors work. It's just every one of them that comes to mind is just stop. Well, anyway, my friends, that's pretty much the end of a busy broadcast week on the program. Don't miss the podcast tomorrow. I have no idea what I'm talking about. Usually, I'll figure that out tonight. But I'm definitely going to publish what was said last night at the Chuck Gray event. I think it's pretty poignant. And from, you go to these events and you never know what you're going to hear, which is why I record all of them that I go to. And so it's pretty cool. And maybe we'll publish the back and forth between Charlie Kirk and the crowd. But we'll do that tomorrow on the podcast. Have a good weekend, and we'll see you next week. For now, from the base of the Bighorns, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy